Okay, so if you're not going to put down, so the best way to suppress weeds is, if you're not going to use herbicides, is to use a mulch. So like a really heavy mulch is going to be the best. So if I didn't want weeds here, I would put compost, and then I would put hay mulch on top of that, and then maybe even wood chips on top of that. But because we're fertilizing everywhere, we want everything to grow, and then we're using our weeds as fertilizer. We're cutting them down and putting them on top of the tomato roots, and over as they break down, they become like a secondary fertilizer. So we want things to grow. Now, how do you do that and not get your weeds completely out of control? Because you're gonna, it's a much easier method to just mulch straight away. So what we do is we let the weeds grow to a certain extent, and then we terminate them. We kind of knock them back and then mulch. So they're established, but they get knocked back and then mulched over. So that really slows them down. And then we leave the pathways green. And as they grow up, by this time the shade is kind of affecting them where they can't grow that aggressively. You're trampling them because you're walking around, and then we're also kind of choosing what we want growing. So we didn't actually plant anything. You can plant things that you like that maybe aren't as aggressive or grow as tall, or maybe a clover that is will add some nitrogen. But what we do is, if we see something that's really super aggressive or we don't really want on the farm, we pull it, and then if there's other things around, we'll just knock those back or trample them or knock them back with a hoe or something like that. So for instance, lamb's quarter we like, so we just let that grow. It's not super aggressive, and it's also like this time of year, it's not like peaking. It started in the spring, so it's growing really slow. So as the tomatoes are growing really aggressively, these are kind of being knocked back. So a really good idea is to use a spring. If you have spring perennials or winter cool season perennials, as those fade away, they're still covering the ground. They're still living. They still have roots in the soil. They're still keeping things cool, but they're not just aggressively. They can't compete with a tomato. So if you're growing a summer annual, having a cool season perennial is a good idea if you can keep those. If you're turning the soil over and a perennial is not an option, then a less aggressive spring annual or something like that that's not going to grow crazy in July. For this one, for this year, we didn't plant anything. We just let the weeds grow, and things like lamb quarter that we like, we just cut back or trample or walk over. And if there's something that's really aggressive or something that we really don't like there's this thorn, nothing on the farm really wants to eat this thorn bush, so we're going to pull it up by the root. And so as you walk through, if you just once a week pull up the things you don't like. The other thing is this barnyard grass will get 6 feet tall because it loves the same fertilizer regimen as the tomatoes. So I'm not really too keen on getting a 6-foot barnyard grass in my tomatoes. So we will, instead of just kind of knocking these back, we'll pull up these. It'll have a little bit of roots, terminate them, and they've taken up a lot of fertilizer. And now they're mulch, and they're also going to break down and turn into fertilizer for the tomatoes. So over, by the course of the summer, you have kind of your weeds are kind of the things that are kind of acceptable and kind of helping out the garden. And that's what we do. That's our weeding program.